Greetings, Ghostwatchers. The YouTube stream you're about to watch is a unique live investigation of the supernatural. It contains material which some viewers may find to be disturbing. No creaking gates, no Gothic towers, no shuttered windows. Yet for the past 10 years, this retrospective documentary project has been the focus of an astonishing barrage of cheese and pickle sandwich jokes. Yes, welcome to this very special 10th anniversary edition of National Séance. My name is Lawden, and I'm the director and co-producer of Ghostwatch Behind the Curtains. Already I hear you ask, what is National Séance? Well, in 2007, I met the writer of Ghostwatch, Stephen Volk, at a screenwriting seminar in Bristol. And we discussed the idea of putting together some interviews in mind for a new documentary exploring the programme. Shortly thereafter, I met the director of Ghostwatch, Lesley Manning, and we decided to make the film together, which we did for 2012, the show's 20th anniversary. But back when I was trying to get the word out about the project, I began to notice the Twitter logo appearing on the side of buses and on billboards and so forth. So I signed up as @Ghostwatch and asked myself, what should I do with this new service? What instantly came to mind was the idea of asking fans to come together in celebration of the programme, in some respects inverting the so-called initial negative reaction to Ghostwatch in 1992 and providing an open forum for like-minded fans to share their stories in a kind of simulated repeat screening. Ghostwatch, of course, has yet to be screened in full again on British television since it first aired. Every year, National Séance has returned for the past decade, in fact. So what better way is there to celebrate the 10th anniversary of everyone's favourite Halloween hoax than by hosting a special live commentary for Ghostwatchers everywhere to enjoy? Well, probably us all meeting up somewhere, but let's face it, that's not going to happen anytime soon. Anyway, we're going to investigate one of the most baffling and fascinating productions in television history. Tonight, the internet is going ghost hunting in an unprecedented scientific experiment where we hope to show you for the first time irrefutable proof that haunted cheese and pickle sandwiches really do exist. Joining me in the studio this evening to offer their expert technical advice are the show's creators, Ruth Baumgarten, Lesley Manning and Stephen Volk, and I think, satellite link-up permitting, we can talk to them now. Famous last words. Hi, Lesley.
Hello.
We are live.
Are we? Did you? You didn't try and phone me, did you?
No.
Okay. Somebody phoned.
Oh, well, as I said earlier, just in case there's any pesky poltergeist this evening, I am tooled up and ready to go. Okay, so let's just put that where we can reach it. So we've got some more people entering the room. I think this is an old friend of ours.
Hey.
Hi, Steve.
Hang on.
Greetings. Hello.
Greetings, Earthlings.
Okay, don't worry about that. It's batteries. So, yes, we're at National Séancing live, 10 years of National Séance. Brilliant.
Here we are.
You know, I don't really know how to start this other than to say, what did either of you think was going to happen 28 years after Ghostwatch? Did you think that there was going to be a building fan presence looking at the program in a different light?
You have to be specific about when did we think what?
Well, when you were making the program, I mean,
Right.
You obviously hope that there's going to be a good response to it, but a lasting response like this, I mean, in some respects, it's unforeseeable.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think when Lesley will fill in, really, but just to leap in, do you hear me okay, first of all? Yeah. You know, when you're making something, you just want to get to the end of making it, to be honest. So many things are going wrong. And, you know, as Stanley Kubrick said, filmmaking is like trying to type War and Peace when you're on a roller coaster. So you're not thinking about what happens after the roller coaster. You just want to get through it, and you just hope to God somebody likes it or somebody watches it. Really, actually, you're not even thinking whether they like it at that stage. You just wanted to get it on the screen. Hope the Queen Mother doesn't die on the night that you're transmitting it, and then the rest is in the lap of the gods. You know, we were on a roller coaster since then, as you know, Rich and Lesley, because of the furore that was created, which I'm sure we'll go into a lot more of. But it was kind of like, you know, walking over hot coals for about 2 or 3 weeks. Then it was being plunged into limbo. It was a bit kind of like the 7 circles of hell. And then you're in the wilderness, and then you come out of the wilderness, and then you realize, hang on, there's some lost souls that think like you do and actually liked it. And then there's a kind of resurrection to new life. You know, it's quite a kind of a gospel story in a way.
And Lesley, what are your thoughts?
As far as I'm concerned, I mean, I was so focused on the film. I mean, it was so complex technically, in a very, very enjoyable way, and layered and layered and layered, and sort of, you know, one's a piece that was exploded out that had to be put back together. So I absolutely had no idea what to expect, and I think I'm speaking for Stephen as well, but I was really shocked at the response. We kept saying,
I mean, partly we would have liked a bit of a response to it in terms of it being a piece of drama. Instead, what we got was a kind of a blanket, or what felt like a blanket negative response to it as a piece of programming, but very little analysis of it in terms of what Lesley and I felt we created, which was a bit of, you know, written, directed, screen one drama. Part of that was because Ruth didn't send out advance copies, because at that time we were all paranoid that the cat would get out of the bag. So she didn't want to give advance copies to reviewers and blow the gaff, so to speak. You know, a whole confluence of things occurred, you know, some of which were planned, some of which were not planned in order to make the thing work. But it's the law of unintended consequences to a certain extent that we didn't get treated like a standard screen one drama that you'd expect to have both previews in the press and reviews in the press.
it felt like a nation in a car crash at the time. And we were wondering why.
How appropriate that we're thinking of that now, 2020.
Yeah, we just wondered why nobody thought about what we thought we were implying, which was, you know, you can't always trust what you see on television, and nobody sort of discussed it from that angle. That's what I remember.
That was the most disappointing thing. But of course, I mean, really, what's behind your question, Rich, is really, what do we think of it now? And of course, it's absolutely gobsmacking that we're even sitting here talking about it to an audience of people that want to tune in on Halloween night to discuss it. I mean, that's, you know, without kind of like, you know, layering treacle on it, that's what you want for any piece of drama or writing that you create, is for people to take notice of it. It would be stupid for me to argue otherwise, and certainly ideally for people to kind of remember it. And the weirdest thing about Ghostwatch, again, we'll probably come back to it, is that it both at times frightened the bejesus out of people, but yet they kind of returned to it and liked it. So it opens up the whole debate, almost academic debate, about why do we like being scared? Why do we like being scared shitless? Why does it stay with us? Why do we gravitate to it? And why do we kind of savor it in a way?
So just to go into a little bit more detail about what's happening tonight. Sadly, for some reason, Ruth isn't joining us at the moment. Hopefully that will change as we go on. But for anybody who hasn't seen National Séance before, or hasn't taken part in National Séance, it was basically, as I said in the intro, just a kind of an idea that I had to bring fans together to discuss the program in lieu of a repeat broadcast. So what we ask people to do, it's now by my clock and by the atomic clock, which I've got beside me, almost exactly 10 minutes past 9. Ghostwatch aired at 9:25. on Halloween night, which also happened to be a Saturday in 1992. And because we haven't had a repeat screening, we kind of do a simulated one. So hopefully throughout the program, I'm going to be able to take some questions from fans all over the world who are watching this right now and syncing up their personal copies. If you have a DVD, even a VHS copy, wax cylinder, whatever you've recorded it on, if you can just get it up to the absolute moment that it starts, and at 9:25 we'll give you a little 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and press play. There is a slight time delay on the YouTube stream, so I think we'll be out by like 10 seconds or so, but as long as you start at 9:25 it should be fine. You'll be able to follow what's going on. And we do want questions coming in from Twitter. You can send them to @Ghostwatch at any point during the proceedings. You can ask about a scene, a character, anything you like. And actually, as we've got a little bit of time before we start, why don't we go to the first question that came in. And the first question that came in advance was from Dottie Day, and it asks, will we ever have a conclusive answer as to how many actual sightings of pipes there are? This is something that Lesley's addressed in the documentary, but
well, I certainly can't answer that because I can't remember. I don't think I put any sightings, or probably a couple in the script, but no more than a couple. And I know Lesley put a lot more in, so I'm the wrong person to ask.
So I've just been looking at going back and looking over my script, and I have a mark, a red mark for Tunstall every time he's in the schedule to shoot, and in the script, and that is categorically 9 times. However, I know I used more. So that's all I'm saying. And I also know that I put in more, and Ruth came in and said that's ridiculous and took out 2. So I don't know where we are.
Okay. Is it possible that some pipe sightings got lost in a different edit for Ghostwatch, maybe an earlier draft or something like that? Because I understand that the show kind of changed a little bit during the post-production process.
Well, yeah, I mean, it went through the whole editing process. Yes, so yes, that's what I'm saying, is that it had quite a few, and then I know we took a couple out. And I do remember in the cutting room thinking, 13, that's a good number. But I mean, and I could, if I went through with a fine tooth comb, I think I could probably find them all.
I like it. I like there not being a definitive number.
Yeah. Some are incredibly subtle.
To explore the dark recesses of the frame to see what they can conjure up.
Yeah.
Well, indeed, that's been happening very recently. The next question that I've got, I might as well do this question because it follows on, is from John Mailer. And he asks, are there any deleted scenes? If so, would they be available at some point? But I believe John also very recently identified an interesting thing that maybe if we've got an opportunity, we can come back to during the when we're going to be able to watch it, obviously. And that's that the television set owned by the Early family in their living room at one point is actually showing a live camera feed from Chris Miller's shoulder-mounted cam. And it seemed like in those days, certainly when everything had to be hooked up and cabled and all the rest of it, that's, there's a lot of effort that went into that. So I was just wondering if you recall that, Lesley, and if you remember what the intention was at the time, because it's quite interesting to look visually.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely had a hookup of the live feed because we in the kitchen, because we interact with Parky in the kitchen.
Yes.
So that was intentional. I can't remember. I mean, I can't remember why we hooked that up into the front room, because it was used as a genuine TV. So I can't remember why we did that. I'm not going to.
That's interesting. I mean, the only thing that I could think of, in narrative terms, was that it's almost like the ghost is watching that. I think John actually alluded to this, that it's as if the ghost is watching them through the camera, as if it's already sort of manifested into the technology that's come into the house. I mean, it's it's an interesting theory, but we
I
can't.
I wouldn't have been thinking that way.
No, that's more a fan theory then. Yeah,
I think so.
Okay,
Yeah,
fair enough.
I think so.
We're quite liable to take all fan theories
Yes,
for what they're worth as well. I love the kind of mythology that has gathered over the years. It seems to be part of it now, which is great.
We've got another question that's coming from a 12-year-old ghost watcher, Keaton, and he asks, how did you think of the story for Ghostwatch, Steve, being that it was so very realistic? What were your inspirations for the story?
I'll try and tell this very briefly because, as you know, it could be a detailed answer. But it began life as a conventional drama to be shot on film, a series that was going to be over 5 episodes. I don't know if Lesley ever knew about that because she came on at a late stage, but I developed with Ruth a storyline that was over 5 one-hour episodes, and it was basically about a film crew, an investigative film crew, getting involved in a haunted house story. And the BBC weren't prepared to commit to that 5-parter. So Ruth asked me to think about how it could be done in 90 minutes. And since the 5th part was a live transmission from a haunted house, I was, I think, on my way up to London, except it probably wasn't, but that's the way I'll tell the story. I was on my way up to London to see Ruth. And on the train, I thought, let's do the final episode and the rest can be the kind of backstory. So let's do it all as if it's a transmission from a haunted house. And then it was really an extension of that one idea that, the live transmission of a haunted house, what would that look like if a TV company actually did it? So all the dramatic decisions came really from that initial kind of conceit. What presenter would they get? What person would they put in the house? They'd get scientists in to fill in when the ghost wasn't appearing. Who was the ghost? What was the background of the ghost? What would it want? And then I got into researching kind of poltergeist cases and that kind of thing. So that basically was how it developed into what it finally became.
I seem to remember I came on board when there were multi-stories, but that concept and that conceit, but there were multi-stories, and then
I did a version as a treatment that was supposed to be a nationwide. There used to be a program called Nationwide, I think, at that stage, or in recent memory anyway, that had local news items, from all across the country, usually at 6 o'clock or something like that after the news. And my idea was that, well, since it's the BBC and the BBC transmits from everywhere in the country, let's have everyone in the country go into famous ghosts and ghost stories, and then one of them will kick off. That was the idea. So we'll go to this one, and I remember going up to Newstead Abbey in Nottingham, where Lord Byron's ancestral home, and I wrote a whole section about what would happen in Newstead Abbey. That all got jettisoned because I think either Lesley or Ruth or both of them said, we don't want to spend all that time going to these locations we never use again. It's all kind of going to get us nowhere. Let's just center on one place that we've decided is the most haunted place. So then instead of taking a lot of airtime to say it, I just had like one line saying, by the parapsychologist saying, we've looked at all the hauntings in England. This is the most haunted place. So I kind of did it in one sentence.
It's really fascinating to me, actually, from a screenwriting perspective. Not that I'm any expert, I just appreciate the craft. But the thing about good screenwriting and good exposition is just making it as simple as possible. And you get that added benefit, the bonus really, of doing a live program where in a conventional drama you might have you could dedicate an entire episode to one piece of exposition, really just moving characters from one place to the other and taking your time, whereas in a live show you literally could get a microphone and just stick it in someone's face and say, what happened on Thursday?
Exactly.
And then they go, and then you've done it. So
yeah.
It's
that was why
sorry, I've got a cat jumping on
that
stuff.
was why I had to kind of unlearn the laws of screenwriting in a sense, because live TV or investigative TV doesn't do the very things you're supposed to avoid, which is someone telling you their life story. It just asked them. You thrust the microphone exactly as you said, Rich. What happened to you? You know, oh, I woke up one day. You know, it's just exposition. So once I was kind of freed of that idea that people could tell you all the exposition right in your face, that paradoxically was a kind of new way to approach it.
Talking about unlearning, I had to sort of, I definitely felt the unlearning of dramatic grammar as well. And in fact, when we start, the first time was when we were filming the outside of the Early's house, and I was going to motivate the pan with a cyclist, you know, which I had as an extra, as a supporting artist, and then I realised that doesn't happen when you send someone out to rush off for a news type item. You know, that
you don't know that. That's a drama thing, isn't it?
That's a drama thing. And the cyclist would interrupt your shot annoyingly halfway through. So that's exactly what I did. So you sort of, you were unpicking the language all the time. Or dramatic language. We're nearly on the off, aren't we? 4 minutes to go.
Nearly. I wonder if we've got time for just one quick question. Cue for the panel. This is from Fusion Patrol podcast. Cue for the panel. The word perfect fluency in the language of 1992 reality TV is a big part of the appeal of Ghostwatch. So are you surprised it's scaring new viewers and finding new fans 28 years later?
Yeah, that amazes me. It amazes me when Lesley and I go to a big screening. And I always kind of say at the beginning, Lesley knows this, I always say, first of all, you've got to think yourself back to 1992 when these presenters were currency of the time. Second of all, you've got to imagine it was kind of designed for a smaller screen than this. So you'll see a lot in the frame that you wouldn't see if you're watching it at home, you know, and it's astonishing. People start to titter and they start to laugh, I would say, more or less for the first like 20 minutes. And then they go really quiet in the middle. They go really quiet as it gets under their skin, and it kind of works on them. You know, it works on them, and you think, how can it work on you? You know, it's not live. You know, it's not on TV. It's very obviously not of now, and yet something kind of bypasses their critical faculties and gets to their kind of reptile brain and really shakes them up. Or part shakes them up and part really kind of like amuses and delights them. It's a kind of balance, really. But we get great reactions now from audiences, wouldn't you say, Lesley?
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It's very satisfying that people still get, you know, still enjoy watching it, even coming to it fresh now.
I remember that happening, what you're referring to at BFI, where there was a lot of, it was a great screening as well, but on the big screen, huge, massive screen, it shouldn't have worked, but it did, you know, and you think it's supposed to be on a little, you know, postage size stamp screen like that. But I think I mean, we'll get to it, certainly. We're going to start very soon, but I think it's the point where people start to feel bad about having enjoyed Ghostwatch because they realize what the program is actually doing to the family. And it's a tremendous,
I think there's something very visceral towards the end in the last act, if you like, last 30 minutes, which is watching children upset. And however much you know it's faked and however much you know the kids are acting, and you tell yourself, oh, that was filmed in the summer, if you know your facts, there's still something that gets your primitive brain about seeing a kid distressed. And there's no easy kind of wrapping up at the end of it either, in terms of the kids' distress. They're left really traumatized at the end of it, you know?
Absolutely. And we're going to get to that very shortly, because we're down to our last 30 seconds. Now, again, if you happen to be watching this with us, there's going to be a slight time delay. So by all means, you can start at 9:25 on the dot, or you can follow us. It really isn't going to make that much difference, but there will be a slight lag. So we're coming up to 10 seconds to go. I'm going to give you a countdown. That's 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, play. Right. Now, it wouldn't be Ghostwatch, I'm sure, if we didn't have a couple of surprises lined up for you. rather than explain what they are, let's just say hello.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Hello. Hello.
Hello, Gillian.
Hello, darling.
We want to see you. Put your camera on.
Yes, I think I've got the camera on, haven't I?
No.
Start video. Stop
Oh.
video.
Ah.
There we are.
Let's go.
Hey!
Gillian Bevan, hello.
Scanner review. Hello. Hello. How is everybody? How are we
Very
all?
well. Good evening.
Good
Great to see
evening.
you. Just watching your university research video. Very impressive it is too.
What's that? I have no idea.
The beginning of the film.
Oh, right. Oh, right. Very good.
So
it's-
we're seeing haunted bedroom footage as recovered
Yes.
by Dr. Pascoe and Alan Demescu from, I think,
Yes.
was it Bath University?
Oh God, don't ask me.
Don't
You're
ask
the-
me. Leslie will know.
This is the thing.
Leslie's
Take a look at
the
it.
overseer.
Our brains have atrophied in the last 28 years. We're young and alert.
technically, we were supposed to have a little fixed camera. Well, we did have a fixed camera, but it didn't actually work to my taste. So I broke my own rules, and we did some hunt and pan and scan and hunt in this part, just to move it around a bit.
Leslie, how did you find the two girls? I've never asked you the process of casting the two girls.
Oh, well, they were
Well, they were sisters, weren't they?
They were sisters, yes. They were sisters, which I was really pleased about. They were both doing a Saturday drama school, and Michel Gish was trawling the the schools and around, and and they were great.
I can just throw in some useless trivia here. There's a Formula One sticker on the one of the doors for the outside broadcast units, the British Leyland freighters, and I've only just caught that, and the BBC coat of arms, which I never really knew that the BBC had a coat of arms. I don't think they've used it for years, but there it is.
Coat of arms, other than the logo.
Yeah, it's on one of
is there?
the doors for the scanner trucks.
Yeah, that's for the outside broadcast.
On the OB unit.
Yeah, definitely.
How extraordinary is that?
Gillian, I was just wondering if I could ask you about your preparation for Dr. Pascoe, because I seem to recall it might be like a deleted scene from the documentary. It's been a while since I've seen it, but you and Steve, I think, did some research into parapsychology and things like that. I was just wondering what you brought to that process.
Well, I love a bit of research, even if you just ignore it, because it's all just sort of fascinating just to widen your brain about the subject, isn't it? Of which I knew nothing. And so, yeah, Steve took me off, didn't we? We went on a date.
Yeah.
To see what's he called? Not Susan.
It was a Society for Psychical Research. I don't remember what the talk was, but it was South Ken, wasn't it? South Ken we went to, and it was
South Kensington.
Yeah, I went to
Lofty Hall, and someone talking about, oh God, I don't remember what the talk was about. I remember distinctly you saying afterwards, "Get me out of here, let's go to the pub."
God, I'm so sorry. Or I need a drink.
But really, it wasn't so much about information. It was for you to see
Exactly how she behaved.
Old men in tweed suits who look as if they've been let out of a very secluded kind of Oxford atmosphere.
Yes.
A whole range of people.
Yes, and she wasn't like that at all.
Quite, kind of not outre, what's the word? Outsiderish women sometimes. And
yes.
Well, mainly I wanted to show you the female of the species. That was the whole point. So that you didn't feel like you were making something up in limbo, really.
Yeah. No, she was great. She was really impressive as a communicator and as a performer.
Oh, was that Susan Blackmore? Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's interesting. She did lots of books about out-of-body experiences, I think. But I think she became known, and I don't want to put words in her mouth because who knows what's happened in the last 25 years or more. But she was quite a skeptical. I thought her books about out-of-body experiences was really intriguing because it was wrapped up in the idea of the dying brain and lack of oxygen.
Yes.
When people have vanished.
In fact, I think that
Yeah.
rings a bell with me now, that
Yeah.
was what the whole thing about, that process of
vanishing
death
down
crossing over.
towards somewhere, and they can smell flowers and they feel they're in a garden, but it's
Yeah.
actually things triggered off in the brain as the brain lacks oxygen. And so,
Yes.
you know, it was, I don't know what, that may be a completely outdated theory now, but that's the kind of thing that
Exactly.
I wanted Gillian to kind of hear from the horse's mouth.
Yeah.
I
But
remember
she-
really excited. Sorry, Gillian, go on.
Well, no, I was just going to say she is quite striking, isn't she? I mean, I looked up a picture of her the other day, and she's got bright pink hair now. You know, she's sort of out there. So she's the opposite of the tweed academic boffin, really, which is great because she's sort of quite sexy and out there.
And that's
What we found afterwards was that we didn't, you know, I did, you know, I followed research and psychical research and that for years before I wrote this, and I've always found it fruitful to read about. But and I wanted her to sound, even though whatever you think of the nature of the program, I wanted her within the program to feel authentic and believable and make sense, you know, which you did brilliantly in terms of integrity. However, we undermine her, you know, and she's out on a limb at the end, doesn't understand what's going on, all the rest of it. But I didn't get a word of thanks from anybody in the Society of Psychical Research or any of these, because they are so, like all experts, you work in drama, you come across this all the time. Everyone is an expert and everyone will tell you what you got wrong because they are the expert, you know?
Yeah.
So,
well, she probably thought that you should have cast her, you see, as well.
Yeah.
So
you did get very excited, Gillian, about your. I remember we went to see Costume, and we were really cutting against what was perceived as the expert woman, which was extremely masculine at the time.
Yeah.
And we tried really hard not to do that.
Yeah, we ended up going to Adolfo Domingo and getting a fantastic Italian silk outfit.
It was gorgeous.
With a gorgeous brooch.
And we thought, we were so pleased.
This is for Rich.
Rich is excited now, look.
Rich is excited.
Ghostwatch Prime. Yes.
When times get hard, I'm going to sell it on eBay. And times are nearly very hard, I'm telling you at the moment.
First refusal.
First refusal. Yes, no. It felt fantastic.
Gillian, you've got to tell, for the benefit of people that didn't read it on Facebook today when I shared it, but tell your Judi Dench story.
Well, I think we might have mentioned it before, and some people have picked it up. Yeah, because I'd worked, you know, name dropping. Excuse me, I'll just pick that one up. I'd worked with Judi in the summer, doing a show at the Regent's Park Theatre, and apparently, you know, after I was a bit drunk when we got back, because we were all sort of high as kites, weren't we, when we got back from the screening? When we got back from the screening, there was the first message on the house phone. There was quite a few, and the first message was from Judi saying, "You absolute bastard, darling, you absolute bastard. I was all set down to watch it with Finty, and for heaven's sake, you came on and you've ruined the whole thing." And it was sort of mock outrage. It was sort of her way, you know, because that's what she does. She sort of takes the piss out of you, which is marvellous. So she sort of said that she'd had a terrible evening, but it was her way of saying well done, really, which is gorgeous, you know.
Excellent. Brilliant.
So
I've got comments and questions coming in from everywhere, but I just want to say thank you to Matt White for saying that we're going to bid up Gillian's brooch, so I have to pay more for it.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Cheers. Matt. Ghostwatch fans unite. Now, we've got something coming up on the screen at the moment. Sarah is just exiting the scanner. She's spoken with Pasco's professional partner, Alan Demescu, and she's talking to Chris Miller. And Chris Miller was one of two individuals who were working at the BBC. Chris was cameraman, on location cameraman. I think since has gone on to become a very well respected director. And sadly, I haven't been able to get a message through to Chris. I'd love to ask what his experience was making the program, but in a few moments we're going to be meeting somebody else, and that person was the sound man for Ghostwatch. And I think if we're lucky.
While we're
Let's see
waiting for him,
Mike,
Mike.
you
So
so connected to audio.
we were really keen to have a real cameraman and a real sound man. So we asked out, we sent out word, and Mike and Chris came back.
Brave boys.
Are you there?
Hello.
Hello.
Is my camera working?
There's a small picture of you, Mike.
Oh.
And
There
no,
should
you
be.
might
Mike,
have to.
There should be a
the sound
camera.
is perfect. Sound is
Oh.
absolutely tremendous. But there's no.
There we go.
There we go.
Oh, there you go.
Hi.
I have a great
white.
face for radio, as you know.
Face for black and white.
Yeah. Well, trying to be visually interesting. Look, windswept
Yeah,
and
of course.
interesting. Hi, Stephen. How are you?
Hello.
Hi, Gillian.
Hi,
Hi,
darling.
Mike.
Lovely to
How
see
is
you.
everyone?
There you are on the
Good.
screen. If my timing's
Not even
right.
that well.
Yeah.
So can everybody see Mike? Because I can only see 4 people on the screen.
No, I can see Mike.
I can see
Oh,
Mike.
wonderful. I can see him now. Excellent.
Yeah.
Have you got him? Good.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
So, Mike, can I ask a question? What was
Please, fire.
your feeling when you were required to actually kind of act, albeit act yourself? But what was your expectation or anticipation of that?
Enthusiasm, just because I'm a buffoon and a sort of a natural buffoon, and I think as a personality that I have to be told often to tone it down, sort of thing, and get back in your box. I can be quite exuberant, but I felt very odd because it's not something I'd ever done. I went to a school where we had a theatre at school, Christ Hospital at Horsham. They had a fully professional theatre. And I worked in the sound and on the lighting crew there. So I was always behind the scenes kind of person. And so I had no experience of knowing what to do or how to do it. And so I would sort of turn around to Lesley and go, well, what do you want me to do? Because I didn't know. And the sort of Leslie's natural action, and I think your style is sort of, well, do what you would do if you were just a sound man, that you don't know how to act, you don't know what to do. So you are just be you. So for all my stupidity and sins, that's what I did.
Brilliant.
And it was a lot of fun.
Excellent.
The other thing I have to ask is, now everyone's on the screen, I can see 4 other people and me. The glory.
Yes. I've got Mike is definitely on the YouTube stream, but for some reason it's limiting our screen to 4. But never mind. We can see you, Mike.
I can see him.
So, Mike, I just wanted to ask what it was like having your own death scene. And indeed, did you die in Ghostwatch? Can you settle the argument once and for all? Were you merely injured?
I was always waiting for a sequel, you know.
You and me both, darling.
Yes.
Like,
It's like Hollywood wasn't beckoning. Yeah. I don't think my skill set was being on screen in that capacity, but I gave it my inept best, and that's all I could do. But it was a lot of fun. My recollection of my time on the project was it was a lot of fun. Everyone was kind of like, how can we do this the best? And it was, you know, I was a young, inexperienced sound person at the time. I'd only been in the BBC a year or 2, and there was an awful sense of, oh, shut up, you couldn't possibly do that. You're far too inexperienced. But no one else who was experienced would volunteer to do it. And I was like, I don't care. What have I got to lose? You know, all I met was nice people. And I learned a lot I learned a lot about makeup. I learned a lot about wardrobe. I learned a ton about cameras and all sorts of things because, you know, during all the sort of tedious moments of setting up filming, could go around and talk, and everyone was just so nice, you know, and just was happy to speak to this young idiotic sound man and I learnt a lot from it, which I think was a terrific experience. And people with 2 years' experience in the BBC usually go around buffing people's shoes. You know, you don't get a chance to work on quality drama. You know, with real people who know what they're doing. And so for me, it was like a fantastic opportunity, and I consider it one of the highlights of my career in that respect. You know, it's a moment that stayed with me for a long time. It was just a lot of fun.
Right. And Mike, do you recall how you actually got involved in Ghostwatch? Was it like a notice on the bulletin board or something, or how did you find out about the project?
Hello, darling. You all right?
Yes, I'm fine.
How's it all going? How's it all going?
Is
Oh,
that,
it's Sarah.
is that
Hello.
Sarah?
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
I hear you. This is so exciting.
It's the best thing to happen since lockdown.
Climbed out of that cupboard under the stairs at last.
Yes.
My
Yes.
friends, and it's Halloween, and oh my goodness, how's it all going? Tell me.
We're having fun. Well, I am so far. I've only just joined. Yes. Sorry, this is Mike, by the way. Yeah.
That's the lovely Mike Aiton.
Oh my goodness, you're kidding me.
And
Oh,
how is the lovely Sarah?
hello, sweetheart. Oh, Lord above, that's wonderful.
And then to our left is Gillian Bevan.
Oh,
Hi, gorgeous.
Lily Bev. Oh,
Hi, darling.
big hugs. Big
Big
hugs,
hugs.
Lily Bev.
Yes, big
And then-
hugs.
Rich, who's organised this all, and then Stephen Volk.
And
Hi,
the-
Sarah.
so how long have you all been there on Zoom, going out to the world, whilst Ghostwatch goes out after how many years? I mean,
28.
19, good Lord.
I know.
I had hair then.
Really quite a thing. We should all be in the same room together, but we're sort of gathered from various corners of the globe, aren't we?
Yeah, yeah. Where are you then, Sarah?
Okay, I am about 25 miles west of London at the moment,
Right.
gathered with friends for a bit of a birthday celebration. Not my birthday, I hasten to add, but I'm with them, but they're aware of the significance of this evening. And something that I heard just before I left the house was that tonight is the first blue moon that occurred on Halloween since 1946. And I thought, well, there's some sort of significance there, I think, to the fact that we're all getting together. I
Yeah.
rather like that. Did you know about that it's a blue moon tonight?
No.
I knew it was a blue moon, which is when there's 2 full moons in the same month. But I
And
didn't know.
Elvis is not in the house. Yeah.
But I didn't know it was the first one since 1946. That's quite a big thing, isn't it?
I know. So what's happening so far out on the interweb, but out in the globe? What's been the response so far?
Well, Rich is at the hub and he's taking all the tweets. What's happening, Rich?
Yeah, this is terrifying because I have to live up to Mike Smith's absolutely brilliant, perfect delivery in Ghostwatch as the phone-in presenter.
Oh, that's really rather lovely. Gosh, that's amazing. Of course.
I mean, for the first time in my life, Sarah, I realise how difficult a job this is because I've got comments and quotes coming in all over the place. But we've got lots of
things are coming in.
Well, we've got some. It's interesting because
That you can say out loud. Yes.
yeah. There's a real mix of comments. Like we've got lots of demands for the Aid Edmondson impersonation from you, Mike. We've got lots of quotes from the program. Lots of people saying, "Wow, Sarah Greene's here. It's amazing. Here's my neck standing on end. This is magical." It's a good response so far.
Can I just say, because I'm looking at my Twitter feed coming in, and lovely lady Julia Smith has said about how she gets together every year with fellow Ghostwatch watchers, and she says lovely things, and I'm just sending love back to her. So there we are. This is extraordinary, because you don't often get the chance to, you can tweet straight back, but to do it verbally like this, to do it vocally, whilst something is going out on air, is it's a whole new meaning of Séance, isn't it?
Yes.
Actually.
Yes, we all ought to be holding hands and going, yeah.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Actually, can I ask Sarah something, which is what Rich asked us at the beginning? What was your first question to us, Rich?
Oh, well, if this is one I recall, it's a question I've wanted to ask Sarah for a long time, and I completely forget every time I see her. But there was a rumor that post Ghostwatch, you appeared on like the Broom Cupboard or Blue Peter or something like that, to reassure the children of the nation that it was all just a play, and don't worry, I'm not still under the cupboard in this, the cupboard under the stairs and all the rest of it. I was just wondering if you recalled that, if you recall which program it was, or if indeed it happened.
Yes, I do. Yes, it's very, very fresh in my memory still after all these years. So Ghostwatch went out on a Saturday night, and on Monday morning, I was called by the BBC to ask if I would go in for children's programmes, if I would go in to the Broom Cupboard, which I think was then being hosted by Andy Crane. I don't think it was Andy Peter, I think it was Andy Crane. And I would go in just to reassure the children who'd been up watching Ghostwatch that I was fine, and that it was a film, and it was a drama, and I was acting, and that's where I started off as an actress, and that this was an acting role, and that I was absolutely fine. And I went in and did that. And what was extraordinary was, I don't know how they did it, but they had the children, that there were some kids who'd been up watching it, and they made their own pictures and drawings of who they thought Pipes was, and how they thought Pipes looked. And bear in mind, this is only 2 days after it had gone out. So there hadn't been all the forensic examination of the whole programme by that stage. But they put together their own thoughts about how Pipes had looked, and pictures, and so we showed those. And I think actually it was a good thing to do. And
was that repeated on another programme? Like, was it put on News Round or the news or something? Because I have a recollection of that.
The question was it repeated?
Was what repeated was
your affirmation that you were okay to the kids? Because I seem to have a recollection that it was on the BBC 6 o'clock news.
No, I don't remember that. They repeated a little clip of it on the news. I didn't see that. But,
right.
What we did was very much within the Broom Cupboard, which was quite the whole atmosphere of that was that it was very intimate. It was a small space, which was the presentation announcer, whether it was Flip Schofield or whether it was Andy Crane or Andy Peters or whoever was in charge of the Broom Cupboard. And it was a cupboard which was somebody going out, usually with a puppet, whether it was Gordon the Gopher or Ed the Duck or whoever. And they would be, this was a direct rip-off of what had been done on ITV years earlier with, when I was a child, Wally Whiten and Ollie the Owl. There aren't many people who can remember that, but I do. And it was a brilliant format. And I went in on that, and as a child, I remember feeling how it was very much directed at me, and it was a one-to-one thing. And I think that's what happened with this too. It quelled any fears that children would have. But I actually don't think that the children, this is the extraordinary thing about, I think, children watching television, they see through all the stuff. And they know what's real and what isn't real.
It's funny. I always say that there's a
inbuilt take on that, you know.
There's quite a difference between adults' reaction to it and children's. The adults seem to be angry about being taken for a mug, and children seem to be kind of both traumatized and also kind of traumatized, but also they kind of get it as well. Maybe because children have to have a kind of nimble imagination, so they can navigate it a lot easier in a way as trickery than adults can.
Remember, think about children's stories, and think about bedtime stories, and think about the stories that all of us have been read as children.
Yeah, children enjoy fantasy and imagination.
You know, there's always this element of horror in it, actually, because it's thrilling. It's thrilling and it entices the imagination, but there's an acceptance that it is. There's a suspension of disbelief there.
I think there's also something about children and
we know what's real, and we want to be taken along. We want to be thrilled and excited, and we love that feeling. We don't feel foolish as children, but perhaps it's the adults who, as you quite rightly say, don't want to be taken as
duped.
I don't know what it is, but there's a sort of ego that steps in.
I think it's also to do with the relationship to authority.
It's drama.
Because children are always the lowest on the totem pole in terms of there's always someone in authority over them telling them what to do. So when they see authority undermined, it appeals to them on some visceral level. Whereas it doesn't appeal to the people in authority.
Yes, I suppose it's almost like the difference between in France, they expect their politicians to have affairs and think it's odd if they don't. Whereas in England, we're disgusted if our politicians don't behave morally correctly. And I think people have that relationship about the BBC, you know, that it's actually, I congratulate the BBC for having had the nuts to do it, you know. And I'm curious, as I'd love to know, Stephen, what, you know, how do you feel? Because I've kind of asked Lesley this a little bit, but how do you feel about, you know, when they sort of slightly back down on it being, and they said it was a Screen One drama sort of thing at the last minute and slightly softened their approach? Do you, how did that make you feel?
Well, there were battles along the way. There was one battle which Ruth told me about, which was someone saying, can we just use actors and pretend they're presenters? And I kind of flounced a little bit at that and said, well, if you're going to do that, there's no point in doing it, you know. And she said, you know, cool down, it'll be all right. And, you know, it always reminds me that producers do a lot of battles behind the scenes that writers never know about. But you know, as the fateful day came closer, I think there were a lot of battles in terms of, I think the day before they said we might not show this, you know.
Really?
God, I didn't know that.
Unless you put the writer's name at the beginning. So Ruth had to go back, didn't she, Lesley, into the
we went in and had to drop the title in the G spool. It had already been made. So it was massively tricky because it had all been packaged for the night already. So we dropped, and when you look at it, it's dropped in for a very short time. But yeah, that was done 24 hours before transmission, so that somebody had sort of panicked it.
But when would the Radio Times have gone to print? Because it was definitely, the cast list was up, and you know, all our credits were as per, weren't they? So I don't know what the lead-in time for that.
My attitude was always, if you've got it, you know, there's nothing more boring than someone telling a joke and saying this is a really good joke and telling you the punchline and then telling you the joke. You know, so I thought that's the equivalent of, if we're going to do a ghost story, you don't tell them it's not what it is at the beginning and then proceed to get them involved in it. That's ridiculous. It's like the worst kind of pub bore, you know.
Yes.
So either do it properly or don't do it, you know. And whatever you think about the tweeness or datedness or comic quality of Ghostwatch, everything's got integrity, you know, whether it's serious, whether it's comic. There's a core of integrity about anything dramatic that you have to really recognize and be true to, both as writer and director and performer. you know, and it's finding that thing that you've got to cling to. And when people kind of threaten it because their agenda is something else, like, you know, the BBC's agenda is, God forbid anyone take notice of something, you know, and you're trying to battle that kind of political, you know, looking after my job, not wanting my boss to be angry with me, those kind of attitudes. And you think,
and could you imagine something like this, Sarah? Could you imagine something like this happening now?
But then not having for want of, you know, I like the expression having the nuts to share it, but not having nuts to follow that through and back it up when it came to, I mean, listen, awards or whatever, but we all kind of thought that it probably would have won a BAFTA because of the reception and the effect it had, not just as a drama in and of itself, but on the way in which television then went. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. This had a dramatic effect on the way in which this type of programming happened in the rest of the world.
Yeah, changed the paradigm, really. Yes.
Haunted to everything else, and deserves that sort of recognition. And the most extraordinary thing is that in the years that have followed, we've had the growth of YouTube, of social media, and it's taken on a massive momentum globally of its own without the BBC. But wouldn't it have been nice to have had some backup there, don't you think?
They absolutely didn't know what it was. They absolutely, I mean, I've seen emails, they hadn't a clue what it was. They didn't know what it was. I mean, I
remember, sorry, Richard Broke said this, didn't he, at one of the screenings we had in Manchester, that in some ways, the great thing, Lesley and Ruth, were allowed to really, you pretty much did what you absolutely wanted to do, didn't you? Because they had no idea, and they weren't that interested, actually. The higher echelons weren't that interested. And it was only when it went out that they thought, what the hell is this? Why is it, you know, that and then they were in a bit of a panic, weren't they, to know how to handle it.
I just read an email that Richard Brooke wrote a couple of years before he died, but about it all. But he said something quite interesting. He said they all sort of like footballers and like sort of Premier footballers watching a netball match. They couldn't understand it. That's what he said in the email.
Yeah.
Analogy there. That's extraordinary. But I remember, and you dropped something in here that might be food for thought for the Ghostwatchers and the people who've known the program over the years. Mike and I went into the BBC after we'd finished recording. You know, as you remember. Well, everybody who's there together now gathered. We recorded this in two chunks. In that the everything that was done at the house on the so-called outside broadcast recorded across the summer, very very hot summer, and then the studio. A section of the program, Michael Parkinson, Gilly, and that was done later on. And stitched together, but it is extraordinary when you think about how those two completely separate sets of making a drama were meshed together. And this is all thanks to Lesley, of course.
Oh, genius! Yes.
After finished in the studio, Mike and I were. You know, it consumed the greater part of that year for us, and was one of the most exciting things we'd ever been involved with. But we were absolutely convinced that it would create a storm, and we couldn't quite see why. At least outwardly, the outward appearance of fantastic people like Ruth Baumgarten were very calm. And we this is going to absolutely, going to create a furore.
Yeah.
Because they're going to think it's live and it's not, and what's going to happen? Shouldn't we have a follow-up show right after it, in the manner of, not points of view as it was called then, but a sort of feedback type program to follow through? Because who knows, something might happen on that night. People might experience a seance type atmosphere in their homes. We don't know what's going to happen, but shouldn't we have something that literally not lets us off the hook? It wasn't that, but stick true to the whole manner of this drama, and then the unfolding of it, and the giving out of the phone number of people who may have rung that number, and give them a chance to let's see what happened with that. Let's do a direct follow-up program after it.
But I think that
was discussed at the time, and then was dropped.
But I think that shows the gap between the film fiction department, who just, and we were confident in telling a story, and then you were very aware of television and its effect on people, whereas I don't think we were so much in that sense.
Really?
Well,
I think you were, but I think that perhaps that I don't know. I got the feeling that Ruth was absolutely aware of it, but didn't want to go down that route. Whereas perhaps we were kind of almost, I don't know. I wouldn't like to. This isn't blowing a trumpet, because I don't know whether it would have been a thing to do, but we were sort of getting ahead of the reality TV part of a sort of different genre that hadn't actually emerged at that stage in the early 90s. We hadn't got such a thing, but we wanted to take it through to that, to sort of say, all right, that was a drama. Now we're going to examine how that affected everybody.
Yeah, how's TV changed? Yes.
And what has emerged out of that? And we wanted to do it immediately, because I think, particularly for Mike and for me at that stage in our lives, we'd been very prey to the press for all sorts of reasons, whether it had been being involved in a helicopter crash or getting married soon after that, and knew at that stage, pre-internet, how powerful the press was, and that if we wanted to quell the effect that this might have, we'd have to do something. We'd have to preempt it,
and sort of get back into being presenter mode, sort of thing, and not step back away from being the actress. Yeah.
So, Mike,
I don't think any of us would have been against that. I don't think any of us would have been against that. I remember Ruth mentioning it. And in some ways, the BBC not doing anything, even in the continuity announcement immediately after Ghostwatch, really created a lot of, bad unintended consequences, I think, really. I certainly wouldn't have disapproved the idea of afterwards having a kind of follow-up, rather like they do now when they have a dramatization of a true crime drama.
Exactly.
And then they follow it with either a discussion or a documentary about the actual people. And I would see, even though it's 28 years later, I would have seen a similar thing where we could have, if you go over to BBC Two, the filmmakers will now have a discussion about this and tell you why they did it and everything like that. And I don't think it would have been letting us off the hook or excusing ourselves or anything like that. But for me, I just didn't want to give away the game at the beginning. I didn't. Once it was over, I don't really mind.
Yes, all trousers have been dropped by then. So
just to be devil's advocate as well, I think the only
absolutely, and I suppose in a way it would have given an extra dimension. I mean, this isn't a sort of woulda, shoulda, coulda, but it was something that I think. And in a sense, what we're doing now, and what's happened over the years, where you've got new generations of viewers who've discovered this for themselves, maybe that, having done that, would have taken the air out of that like in a sense, and that it wouldn't have allowed new generations of viewers to discover it and be not inspired by it, but perhaps moved by it and discovered it for themselves, and would maybe actually in the long. Looking at it with the long game, it's better that didn't happen. But at the time,
I think you're right, Sarah, because I think
I wish you'd taken that idea up. But I don't know. It's interesting to ruminate over that.
Gillian's got something.
I just think I think that what was really amazing were the conversations that people were having themselves in their living rooms about it. Children and parents and in, lots of my friends and lots of my younger friends now who said, "Oh my God, it's you, you're Professor Pascoe. I watched it when I was 10. Somebody was around here last night sort of saying about that. And in a way, had there been a post, thing on BBC Two or whatever, it might have taken away from those conversations. And in a way, we've been having those conversations for 28 years, haven't we?
Yes.
We've had a growing sense that people have discovered it again and thought, this is amazing. This is amazing, And it's when you tell people, we made this prior to mobile phones. I don't think I had a mobile, or I just got a mobile phone then, let alone Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and all of that. We didn't have smartphones or anything. I had a Nokia, I think, for 7 years, and so it's the conversation that's happened in the intervening 28 years that's been
Blair
amazing.
Witch, you said, Gillian, it was before Blair Witch Project.
Exactly.
And the BBC, Ghostwatch was in a way literally a found footage film, because it was kind of buried and found 10 years later.
Yes.
So we didn't have to fake the fact that it was found, because it was kind of found by the fans later on. So
BFI.
In retrospect, there's a kind of wonderful. Well, we have to live with it anyway, so we may as well accept it. There's a wonderful kind of mythology that goes with that 10-year gap when people weren't allowed to see it. And people half remember it, or only saw part of it, or didn't see the ending, or didn't see.
I'm very, very curious to know that what was the sense of outrage from the British public in terms of, I hear that, what's-her-face's dress on the Simon Cowell show, Amanda Holden's dress has received thousands of complaints on the BBC, and how many complaints were there about Ghostwatch? Because there seemed to be this press fury that the British public have been duped by Parky and by you, Sarah, thinking that this is a TV presenter, we trust TV presenters, sort of thing, and they've never experienced being lied to or being cheated like that before. And I'm curious as to know what Lesley, what reaction did the BBC get negatively? And also, Sarah, did you find professionally that people said, "Oh, you can't do children's programs because you do horror shows now," sort of thing? Did it have an impact on you like that?
No, it didn't. Is the simple answer? Not at all. The BBC, for all its factions and different departments, they did talk to each other, and I loved the idea of being asked to be in Ghostwatch, because as someone who started out as an actress, who trained as an actress, and who worked as an actress and made her living as such, to then be able to go back and sort of combine the two areas in this really extraordinary way was a gift, a complete gift for me. But I did discuss it with the people who were not just my employers in terms of the editors and producers in the children's department, but they were my friends, and they were really interested in it. And I said, look, this is the idea. I mean, how do you feel about this? And there was a bit of humming and ahhing and, well, but I suppose if it's couched within the context of it going out after the watershed, and listen, in terms of, and here's the thing, on paper, here it says it's Screen One. It's written by Stephen Volk. It's directed by Lesley Manning. It's produced by Ruth Baumgarten. It's a drama. The kids should be in bed. We know that doesn't really happen. The kids don't go to bed at 9 o'clock, and they do stay up and watch something.
Yeah, the kids are all right.
An ex-Blue Peter presenter who's featured or who's presenting a show every Saturday morning. What I wasn't allowed to do was trail it on the Saturday morning.
Sure.
I wasn't allowed to do that. I think one of us might have mentioned the fact, well, I'm working tonight, I've been on Saturday morning, I'm working tonight, and I'll see you next week, and everything will be fine. I think there was a reference to that, but it wasn't heavily discussed or trailed. And I suppose, really, Mike, that's the reason why I did feel a responsibility in as much as I thought after show explanation program would not just be fun, but it would put paid to any kind of blame that might happen.
Yes, I see that.
You'd
Yeah.
be scared by it. I mean,
Yes.
that.
Because as a presenter, you're the one who's crossing the line more than, say, Gillian, who's predominantly always being an actress. Yeah.
Yeah. I just thought I was doing a marvelous Screen One drama, but I didn't have the profile that Sarah had.
I wanted to do my explanation in the broom cupboard on the Monday afternoon, which I did, and that seemed to put paid to any other problems that might have occurred. And then I was back on screen on Friday afternoon doing a trail for Saturday morning. That was it. It was done. And I was carrying on doing my Saturday morning programs and other shows that I was doing for BBC at the time, and watching the sort of, the postmortems unfold of Ghostwatch. But
how many complaints did we get, Lesley, to the switchboard?
We were terrified by it, but that's drama, isn't it? That's what drama does. The suspension of disbelief for that time that you're watching something, and the enjoyment of being moved, whether it's being scared, being frightened, being... I don't know. I mean, this did take it to another level, because there you had got Michael looking as though he had been possessed. And I can't quite remember. This is completely my reaction. I can't remember what the response was to Michael the next day, and and how the press addressed that. And of course, it did matter a lot more. You see, if this had all happened, when there was social media, when the internet was up and running. I mean, 1992, I got my first computer in 1999. I mean, 7 years later, we had 7 years of not being able to have instantaneous results from reactions to television programs, radio programs, movies, cultural events, political events. You hadn't got that instantaneous response then. And
maybe sometimes that's a good thing, though.
it's delayed for that response, isn't it?
Yeah, Mike saying sometimes it's a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine what would happen now if something of the equivalence of Ghostwatch happened now, with the Twitter sphere would have gone bonkers, and perhaps people would have had too much voice rather than just accept it and go, wow, that was a piece of TV that I wasn't expecting. It knocked me off my perch and everything. And everyone talked about it the next day, but they didn't get angry about it to the point, I don't think, that they could have done had they been on Twitter. I don't know. I mean, I'm curious, Stephen, what do you think? You as a writer, would you want people to be kind of going at you or not?
No, I think it would be horrendous when you think of the rage, the rage that consumes people. And actually, funnily enough, I think it's rather similar to the way I pictured the audience. I always say that the audience for me is the protagonist of Ghostwatch. They're the ones who enter the story and want something. They desire to see a ghost. And the whole story is about their desire to see a ghost and it going wrong because they get what they wish for. And horror stories are often about be careful what you wish for.
You wish for, yes.
So even though we never see the audience, we are the audience. We are our character in the drama. And I think that the Twitter sphere is similarly voyeuristic, detached from any result of what they say. And they're very similar, a similar position to my fictional kind of audience of Ghostwatch.
Yes.
They don't really care about the anguish those kids are going through because their desire to see a ghost is more important than seeing those kids suffering.
Yes.
And you really become aware of that when you watch it now. It's kind of like, no, I don't care about that. Show me the ghost. I want to see the ghost. You know, and it's become that kind of world now on the internet, I think, and social media.
Lesley,
that's why I wouldn't want. I kind of don't see how you could do it now. It would be all over in 5 minutes because everyone would have figured it out because everything is fake now.
Yeah.
You'd have to do it for real. It would stand out maybe if it was for real, but maybe it wouldn't because nothing would happen. But what I mean is, you know.
Yes.
The
yes, that's the irony of it. Yes.
There is, you know, everything you see now is fake, and people assume it's fake. So therefore, you know, I don't know. In the present day landscape, I've had interviews recently where I said, people always say, "Would you do it again?" or "How would you do it now?" And I say, it's not up to me to do it now. I did it 30 years ago. It's up to someone else to decide to do something that I wouldn't think of. You know, and I'll be
yes. That was your dangerous thought then. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a whole new generation, literally, now who come up with something that I wasn't expecting. Hopefully.
Did you both, Lesley and Stephen, did you both read any of the transcripts of the complaints? How many were there to the BBC? Was it 30,000?
Well, about 2,000 complaints officially.
But there were
less than Amanda Holden's dress.
But the calls into it were more than that, weren't they?
The calls were huge. I think it's a shame that we haven't been able to bring Ruth into the discussion because I think I remember hearing from her that the peak 5 minutes or something of telephone activity, there were anywhere between 500,000 and 1 million people trying to get through.
No, I didn't know that.
Believe so. I might be wrong, but it was a huge number because when you think about it, when we do the occasional screening,
the switchboard's only got several hundred lines, from what I remember.
Exactly. I think 2 calls and it collapses anyway.
Yeah.
So
I remember Ruth saying that she was when she left to come to the little party that we're at. She left and walked through dear old Broadcasting House reception, and there were musicians and various visitors standing, looking up at the screen that showed what was going out, you know, and looking kind of shocked and pale. And
look what's happening in Studio One.
Without saying anything, thinking, "Oh my God, I think having a bit of an impact."
She said the technicians were thinking that Studio One was going wrong and didn't know how to do anything about it. Yeah.
Oh wow.
I mean, you imagine, don't you, that you could sort of see this in a visual sense. If someone represented this visually, you'd have probably not Television Centre, which is where it should be, but the old Broadcasting House with lightning and thunder coming out,
and the Pillsbury Dough Man walking up and down the Chelmsford Circus.
Stay puffed.
But even when I was doing it, though, even on the floor, I don't know if you remember this. Oh no, you weren't there in the studio, were you, Mike? No. So
yeah, it was because I was feeding Michael all his lines because it was recorded several months apart. With that two-way, I went into the studio to feed him his lines off camera so that he could respond in a natural way.
Well, I remember I was plotting the floor manager running into to Michael Parkinson and being caught on camera and running off camera to create that sense of it's all going wrong, because that's the bit that I used to love in TV when someone would be crawling around the back by mistake.
Yes.
You know, and Richard Brooke was sort of leaping out of his seat going, "What the hell is she doing? What's she doing? She's filming the mistakes."
I know it's so unfortunate, isn't it? But what you'd got into, Lesley, was the whole difference between perfection of television drama and the reality of television live broadcasting and documentary and those
And
oil and
obese.
water, the total oil and water. Yeah.
Stood within a year or within a 3-year period where you'd had airport watch, rail watch, hospital watch. I mean, you know, Mike Smith, my Mike had done hospital watch, rail watch, and airport watch. I'd done airport watch and hospital watch, and now Ghostwatch. So, you know, this was the context that it was sitting within. And having someone crawling through the back of the shop was the least of the problems. But for a drama producer, this was anathema. I mean, it was totally wrong, but you'd got it so right. And I think, you know, that's the writing of it and the directing of it, you know, that's the success of it.
But Lesley, you were so involved in all of it. I mean, I'd forgotten. I think I must have known at the time that you'd done the voice of Pipes.
Yeah, that wasn't planned. That so wasn't planned.
But it's got a wonderful, because it is like your voice, your arterial voice coming through. It's extraordinary that you ended up doing that.
Television history, Lesley, that's you.
I was empathizing with him. It was extraordinary because, I mean, bless him, the voiceover artist came in, and it was more of what the whole piece had unpicked. I mean, Stephen's talked about unlearning dramatic language, but also the directing had to unlearn dramatic language at every step. And they always unpicked all of it, and any artifice had to be examined. And of course the voiceover artists came in, and they were paid massive amount of money for an hour to do really skilled, you know, like at least 25 accents and whatever. But whatever it was, I just couldn't get the ghost. I couldn't get now.
It just sounded like Brian Blessed with different accents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I haven't. No, I haven't.
Yes, I'm scary.
It was exactly as Mike said. It wasn't like Brian Blessed. And so the engineer said, "Well, what on earth do you want?" I mean, he was really sweet, and we were just left there with a half hour of time in the studio, in the sound studio. And he said, "Well,
was that Alan Machin? Was it? Yeah.
I can't remember. Was it
Alan and Paul? Probably. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And then so I went into the booth and said, "Well, it needs to be something like this." And they went, "Yeah, we've got it now."
Anyway, and did they treat it? Did they speed it up? Did they mix it with something else, or what do they do with it then?
Yeah, it's been treated, hasn't it, Mike? You can hear this.
I don't know. I wasn't at the dub, so I can't tell you.
It's been.
But trade secrets couldn't possibly tell you, even if I knew.
No,
you'd have to shoot us.
Well, if I can just step in here, I had one more question for Sarah, but then there's also another little surprise that we've got lined up. I wanted to ask Sarah, am I right in saying that Ghostwatch wasn't the only occasion? Because I remember, I'm going to ask the question, but I remember Steve saying recently, what's the connection between Ghostwatch and Vincent Price? And I think it was because Parky appeared as himself as a television presenter in a film called Madhouse with Vincent Price, and he had so basically Parky's played himself in 2 horror movies. But I think I'm correct in saying that you and Mike went on to appear together as TV presenters, or indeed yourselves, in a Bill Murray film called The Man Who Knew Too Little.
Yeah, you're quite right. My goodness.
Yeah.
Research. Okay, so here's the thing. I got this was so. Mike would be, I'm sure he is smiling about this now. Yeah, I got cast to play myself in The Man Who Knew Too Little in a it was a very brief sequence that I was appearing in. We recorded and it was all fine. And then the producers in Hollywood decided that they wanted a man to play that role. Surprise, surprise.
Mm.
Anyway, and so they asked Mike to do it. And he said, well, how do you feel about this? I said, it's fantastic. Listen, the income's all coming back into the same household. Don't
Yeah.
give it a second thought, you know.
Mm.
Knock yourself out. Go do it. He did it. It was brilliant because he didn't play himself, actually. He kind of sent up whole genre, and he did it absolutely marvelously, and it's him that appears in the film, and that's just fine by me. That's
Fabulous.
perfect. And he is in that. So yeah, we'd each been in it, but me not appearing in the final movie, in it, which was perfect, which is wonderful. Thank you for that. I'd forgotten all about that. That's lovely. It'd be a very nice feeling.
Well, thank you, Sarah, and thank you so much for joining us. And I hope you can stick around as long as you can.
I hope you excuse me, but I ducked out of a special birthday celebration of 6 of us all gathered together in my friend's house. So I will get to them. But can I just say thank you for the opportunity to come and just relive these moments with you. Such an important part of my life, and it always will be. And I loved Ghostwatch. I loved everything about it, and I always will. And I'm just so grateful to the people who've sustained that over the years, and hopefully it will go on.
That's great.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Yeah, lovely
Love you,
to
Sarah.
speak to you again.
Lots of love.
Bye.
Lots of
Bye.
love.
Bye. Speak to you later. Bye. Bye.
Right. Well, that was wonderful and a real unexpected pleasure. I think that all came together about 2 minutes before we started or something. So that's absolutely brilliant. We've got another surprise guest lined up who I hope is still waiting, because what would Ghostwatch be without its design? As you can see, I'm wearing the t-shirt. I've got my authentic Sarah Greene pin as sent to me by Jed Shepherd, I think, who went on to become a major, huge movie producer.
Oh,
you know,
he
first he sends you a pin and then he becomes a massive Hollywood dude. They've made Host recently. I had a hand in that. Behind me, I've got the Foxhall Drive sign as sent in by Hidden Britain Sign Company, I think. I'll double check that, which is absolutely fantastic. And not forgetting, of course, the Disney edition of Sorry, which Michelle and Charisse Weston play in character during the film. So where did all this come from? Well, hopefully we're going to be able to find out if I press this button here and introduce to the evening Mr. Richard Drew, who was on the set design.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, Richard.
Hi, Richard.
Hi, Richard.
Hi.
I'm waiting for your picture to appear because I'm
Oh,
on a
well,
delay.
hang on,
How
sorry.
are you?
Classic. There we go. How's that? Can you?
Yes, hello.
Yes. There, I can
Hi.
see me now. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm really sorry I missed Sarah, because I worked with Sarah on Going Live the previous year, and I just wanted to say hello to her.
Oh,
Just gone.
Just-
Happy Days going live. I remember doing those.
Yeah.
So did you work with Ken Starkey after? Were you his assistant?
Yeah, I was, because the way the BBC used to work, they used to kind of throw people together. So Ken, I'd done a series called On the Up, a sort of sitcom prior to doing Ghostwatch, and then it was just the next job. And Ken and I were in the same office, design office, and I think obviously he must have been on board quite early, and he needed an assistant, and I was available, so he knew me because, as I said, we shared an office, and that was it. And we only worked together once, and I really enjoyed working with him. Actually, it was you know, looking back on it now, look, we're talking about it 28 years later, but I really enjoyed my time with him. He's no longer with us, Ken. I know, yeah, I don't know when he passed away, but he's not around anymore.
Oh, dear.
mm.
And sadly, John, who was the set decorator, production buyer, sadly no longer with us. So,
Gosh.
last man standing of the design team. Yeah, it was Sarah was just saying what a important time in her life it was, and it was for me. I was really kind of just totally sort of made up to be part of it, and now as everybody's been saying, I mean, I'm an old man of TV now. I'm 33 years and I'm production designing still. And, and I mentioned it to people that I worked on the show, and you still get a blimey, I'd watched that. And I was a nipper when I worked, I watched that and all the rest of it. And I bore people that I talk about that I worked on it. And, but some people are really amazed that I was involved in it. Uncredited, because obviously the BBC, the way they used to work, didn't used to credit assistants. But yeah, I'm very, very proud to be part of the project. And obviously I follow you, Lesley, on Twitter, and Stephen, and obviously Rich. So you can see the world is still very much alive with it.
Richard, what was the most, just to throw a question at you, what was the most difficult part of the task that you had, looking back?
The easiest thing of the task, which I must just say, because actually as an art director and as a standby art director, the thing you need to always keep an eye on is cables and leads and things in the back of shot. And it was the one job I did as an art director where that was not an option. Everything that we saw in the house we could see, and actually for me it was just a dream, because it was all real. But so that was
show more cables. Show more cables. Yeah.
More cables. I've never been on a job where you were dressing cables into the shop. I guess once we got into the studio, because Ken had a very clear idea on what this thing was going to look like, and actually coming up with those printed images, I guess, was one of the most complicated things, because he sent me up to a company up in really up some far away up north, to a company called Scanachrome. I think they were in, oh God, I can't think where now, but he sent me on a train for 3 or 4 hours up north to a company called Scanachrome. This process of printing giant photo blow-ups had just sort of been invented on this kind of scale, printing onto fabric. So we devised those printed images, which I don't know if you know, Stephen and Lesley, but basically we went to the BBC Reference Library and photocopied pictures of knobs and knockers from Victorian doors. There was a reference book in the BBC. In fact, I've got them still. These are the originals. And Ken and I just literally moved them on a photocopier. Very, very slowly. So this is Photoshop. And then we got those printed onto the giant flats that you see in the studio. So that whole slightly ethereal, curvy look kind of came about because of these images. And we decided to sort of go very lo-fi in terms of treating them. But yeah,
wow.
So they are the original artworks for the set flats.
Wow. That is so cool.
Yeah. So yeah, that was kind of involved, and just looking at it, because I've got it running in the back of shot here. Obviously, I'm running it. Lesley, I didn't realise just how technical the whole thing is. I've just done the first series of the Alan Partridge thing this time, and we're about to start shooting another series of it. And we've got some of these technical elements where you're playing in footage, or you're playing in green screen because you're going to drop the footage in later. But looking at it now, and it's there as I'm talking to you, I can see it. Just the technical involvement. It's actually quite mind-blowing. And obviously, technically, we were ahead of the curve in terms of what you were trying to do. And it was almost, again, a very lo-fi way, in a funny kind of way, a lo-fi way of doing it. But I hadn't realised, and just watching it now, just how technical the whole project was. And your head must have just been full of
I look at the script now, and I've just got reams of like pre-prepared tapes coming in for just 1 or 2 seconds behind Gillian's head. Because every time there was a 2-shot that way. If we wanted anything, because obviously it wasn't live, which everyone thinks, hopefully everyone was live, we had to prepare a tape for it. I got like reams of tapes that we knew were going to go exactly where. But that video wall was surprisingly new. I mean, I thought I'd seen video walls before, but they hadn't done video walls like that because we had to feed VHS tapes into the wall. They were normally piped from live fields, I think, or from other cameras that were working. But because we were putting tapes, and they had to line up 16 tapes or something and play them all at the same time.
And were they all so they were all playing different bits of it, were they, or did they all? Or were
they all had to make the one picture, and they somehow worked that out.
I don't remember that, but that technology, as you know, in the last 5 years has just moved on leaps and bounds. I mean, every time I do a job that involves a video screen, the technology has just moved on again. Your pixel distance has gone from 8mm down to 2-3mm now. I mean, you're getting to the point where you're just going to end up with giant telescreens in studios. It's just extraordinary how that is. But that's it in its infancy, 1992. I mean, I did a job in BBC Wales in 89, and we had a video wall, and I think it was only 9 cubes, and it was like, that was cutting edge. So yeah, funny enough, I've also got the sketch for that somewhere, because I do keep a little archive. So that was one of Ken and I's sketches of that video area.
Oh wow!
An early sort of incarnation of it, with the floaty panels. Those
almost like curtains as well by the video wall there, Richard.
Well, yeah, it was just trying to. I think Rich and we talked about it, just trying to do a very soft shape. If you look at everything that's in that set, it's the curved pattern on the floor, the sort of ethereal cloths, the columns. It's all soft edges, which are. Stephen, I think you sent Ken there was a ghost image that you had. I think it's the one that's on the fireplace.
Yeah. It was a painting by an artist called Helvine that I'd seen in Austria, actually, years before I got a book of an exhibition. And this kind of bedsheet ghost was such an iconic kind of image that he painted. I mean, I think I referenced it in the script, not expecting, because you never do really expect the production to use the actual image, but I think they actually did, didn't you?
It appears above the fireplace, but if you look at that pattern on the studio floor, that's definitely there's an echo of that ghost, that ghost white sheet sort of appearing on the floor as well. So I think Ken took that. I remember him showing me that image. He sort of, that was a sort of definitely a starting point for the whole design, was that image.
Yeah, and the whole fireplace is kind of harks back to A Tale Around the Fireplace. It's kind of ridiculous in an electronic studio, but I kind of love the idea. We're telling a tale around the fireplace with a ancestral portrait, except it's a portrait of the most hokey image possible, which is a bedsheet ghost. So it doesn't kind of and pumpkins either side of the fireplace. It's. I don't know. I love that mixture of things that's just giving the audience.
It's like analog in a digital world, isn't it?
Yeah.
Richard, do you remember when we discussed one of the books that you identified, Charles Rennie Mackintosh?
Yeah.
It was like a neo-Gothic school of ghosts design. I think it was either the fireplace or the table. They're very specifically chosen. Set dressings. They weren't just thrown in.
Well,
it
was
really...
the fact that I remember Ken saying about the Mackintosh fireplace, and actually, if you look at the columns, they've got these triangular details, which are very Rennie Mackintosh. And I think it was when I was with you, we were just chatting, and it always puzzled me as why he'd chosen that. And then, as you said, the Mackintosh, that period was known as the School of Ghosts, and then you go, well, that's exactly why he chose that. And I love that level of detail. And as the art director, I wouldn't necessarily been aware of that. It would have been something that Ken had just thought about and sort of got on with.
It's like design onomatopoeia, isn't it?
Yeah, I absolutely love that detail that's never referenced, but it's just there. I think it's lovely. And I was just noticing the chairs. If you look at the chairs that in the studio, they're sort of got a very soft kind of curvy back to them.
They are, yes, the sinewy.
That's echoing the shape of the set as well. So it's all there, and it all stems from that ghost portrait.
Were you involved in the house, Richard?
Yes, I was there. I was there every day. Yeah, I'm there on the
So
street outside.
how much did you have to do in the house, given that it has to look like pretty much a real house?
Well, I think we redressed it. We put that full. Well, I'm just looking over my shoulder now. So the bit where the picture falls off the wall in the living room, so there's a little dividing wall, a false dividing wall there, because essentially it's me pushing the picture through from the other side of the wall. Quite a low. I'm giving the game away.
We drilled a hole through it, didn't we?
Lo-fi way of doing it. So that wall was put in, and then obviously the girls' bedroom was a complete dress. I mean, we redressed everything. I think, Lesley, you guys had that room in the front of the house, that sort of third bedroom.
Yeah.
I think all the monitors were. And funnily enough, I have the plan of the house there. So
oh my goodness.
So that's the upstairs. And then that's the downstairs. And I think the glory hole the door was put on. I don't think I think it was just an open space under the stairs. I think we kind of built that glory hole in for Sarah to sort of end up in. And then I don't know if you remember, Stephen and Lesley, you'll remember, but we tented out the set for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So we were shooting, I think Sarah said it was really hot that summer.
And we were
shooting indoors in a tented out house, which was it was
roasting.
It was really warm. And then I think it was the last 2 or 3 days. Then the last 2 or 3 days of the shoot were a night shoot, and then we went into the studio. I think there was a gap. So during that last shoot week, the set would have been going in up at Elstree. But yeah, Stephen, I'm there on the street stuff outside. I've got a check shirt and a baseball hat, very 1992. But I'm there as one of the crew and throwing paper into the fan when the fan kicks off and things start blowing. I'm sort of just chucking stuff at. But it must
be an intriguing kind of exercise to go into a house and rather than kind of something with a limitless budget, but where you kind of show off the design idea. You have to do the complete opposite with this and make it look as if
normal as possible. There
hasn't been any effort in the design whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's
really underplayed, isn't it? It's just totally underplayed as a sort of a visual, and the girls' bedroom's got that identity with the posters. And I was saying to somebody on Twitter the other day that was talking about it, that you wouldn't be able to do that now with those posters because copyright regs are so strict.
Wow, yeah.
That you couldn't just rip a poster out of a magazine and stick it on a wall. You just wouldn't be allowed. So as a designer now, I tend to, you kind of recreate that sort of stuff or try and avoid.
What about, you wouldn't be able to use the Mickey Mouse pajamas, would you?
No, Mickey Mouse, there's Care Bear. I mean, it's all there. I mean, even Craig's got the NFL on his jacket. You just wouldn't be allowed to do it now. It was so much easier back then.
Yeah, the house was completely, it was empty, it was unused. It was, it was totally from scratch.
Yeah.
It was dressed.
No, it was I think we all got a bit fed up with it after 3.5, how many weeks we were in there, but it was a nice thing. And we did some stuff with Craig in the garden at the back, didn't we? We shot some stuff, I seem to remember, out the back of the house.
With Briege, we had Briege, and then we had Tunstall in the house, just lit.
Yeah. Went to the playground, remember?
Yeah.
I can't remember. Was that playground something that we put in, or was it there, or I can't remember where
we. It was there, I think.
Yeah.
It was there.
Yeah.
If I can just make an observation as well, because normally I'm doing, all of the little different gags and stuff throughout Ghostwatch. I usually make notes of them, but we've just missed my favorite line from all of Ghostwatch, which is from Craig, and it's something I wanted to mention because I it would have been great for Craig to be. I'm sure he's busy doing other things and all the rest of it. But if you actually read the scripts for Ghostwatch, Craig's character, the on location interviewer, doesn't read like Craig at all. because obviously it was just a character type, really. Parky kind of reads like Parky, and Sarah reads like Sarah, but Craig's character really just meant, I picture somebody else, even though I know Ghostwatch back to front. And that's my favorite line in the whole thing, because if you read the script, when Craig's caught off camera and then he sort of gets professional again and then thinks he's off and he says, "Only the BBC loves." If you actually read the script, that line reads sincere, as if like some lovey's saying it or something, like exasperated. But you give it to somebody like Craig. You say this for the whole cast of Ghostwatch, present company included, Mike. But everybody brings their own realism to those characters, and it would have been very easy to just sort of cast a type or whatever. But by bringing somebody in like Craig specifically, he's gonna twist it, and he's gonna make it more real on his terms. Is that fair to say? Would you say?
Yeah, that's definitely what I would want, and I'm sure Lesley would want as well. I mean, the classic example is Parkinson. Really, there was I think Lesley, I can't remember how it happened, but there was a slight question like, do you mind Parky changing your lines? And I'm like, my God, this is the guy that's interviewed Muhammad Ali and Belly and Penguin, and God knows James Cagney. Who knows more about how to interview someone, me or him? That was my attitude. Who knows more about how you talk to an auto cue or interview someone?
I was just wondering if I could ask Gillian, what was it like being interviewed by Parky? Because presumably you'd have to do multiple takes of the same interview. You know what you're going to say. Yeah. But Parky, was he more sort of fluid? Did he stick to the script? Would he throw things in? What was it like for you?
The plot is complicated from Pasco's point of view. So I absolutely work my socks off being completely, what, nobody understands the amount of prep that you have to do, especially for something like this. And I think Parky was quite nervous as well to begin with. But, he didn't have to really, he had the auto cue. So if only I could have an auto cue now, it would be brilliant for, for all the dramas I do now, because it now takes me about 6 weeks to learn anything, really. But then he did start to warm up. He started to, we just got to know each other. And we spent a lot of time in that studio talking about the world and loves. And, I was getting married 3 weeks later. And so we were talking about that. And in fact, he said, "Well, are you going on honeymoon?" I said, "Yes, I'm going to Barbados." And he said, "Oh, yeah." And then he started talking about cricket, because he obviously thought that I was a cricket fan, and that's why I would be going to Barbados.
Yeah. So are you hungry? Let's play cricket. Yeah.
I mentioned David Gower and a couple of cricket people that I vaguely knew. So, but he did, after a few days, he definitely loosened up and would go off-piste.
He was very playful, wasn't he?
And it was great.
Department, we all put silly wigs on and we were buggering around with the makeup department. You put silly wigs and moustaches and comedy beards on, because there wasn't much for us to do in the studio sections, because you put microphones on people and sit and wait for things to go wrong. Yes. So whenever I've got some lovely photographs of me putting Parky's radio mic on, and I've got like a hair bear bunch, sort of 1970s hippie curly hairdo with a beard and a moustache, and he's just laughing his head off. He
loved all of that.
He just so took it in his stride.
But even on take, he'd love to throw in, often at the end of a scene, he'd throw a googly at me, to use a cricketing term, and it would be great, because I would react completely, in character, and as Stephen said, that's what we all wanted, wasn't it? Really, we wanted it to be as real.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go, Lesley.
My memory was that that you were completely off book, obviously, and perfectly on all over it. And with Parky, we would, if his auto cue performance wasn't right, because he needed that relaxed that thing that we all loved about him, which was really chatty and relaxed. He was the doyen of that sort of interview technique, which is what I was trying to get him to do. So it was like a contract between the two of you. So we would remind him of the 3 plot points that he had to say, and he mustn't not say those. But in between that, he could do his thing a bit. So, but also the shooting style was that we rehearsed massive long takes. I mean, like 10, 11-minute takes. And so the two of you did this dance and around each other. And you would get it by you would understand each other perfectly, but added into that was these bits of wall that you had to react to, which actually weren't even real, weren't responsive. So he and you had to fill any gaps. You had to sort of make that fit too, because Sarah
and fit it to it. Yes, I remember always turning round and then sort of vaguely pointing at something.
And we used to rehearse. And
it's the only way to do
it. Endless takes, no cuts, all the way through. And then we get it. And then we just all go home, because there was no point in starting 10 for another 10 large, huge.
No. Scenes. And in a way, that's, because obviously, I mean, I love telly and film, but I mean, I've done lots of theatre as well, and that's the joy of it. I mean, and it's the joy of watching a long take in the West Wing, isn't it, with a handheld camera going through 15 scenes. And in fact, years later, doing 40 episodes of Teachers, we did lots of handheld camera stuff, and we did exactly the same thing. We would rehearse for most of the morning and not film anything at all, but then it would be like a first night. We'd all be, and with people coming in and interrupting and everything. So that's when I think you're at your best as an actor, really, if you've done all the work and then you just sort of let it fly a bit. And the adrenaline is up here because you know that it's a long take and you don't want to mess it up.
Your instincts kick in,
Yeah, you're on a different...
Ability takes over,
You're on a different plane, I think, really. Yeah. But it's due to you understanding that we needed to rehearse, because otherwise we wouldn't have got it.
Yeah, because we couldn't have shot it in a traditional way at all. We couldn't have covered it, you know what I mean?
No.
It had to be, all of it had to be sort of
seamless.
Yes, with the cameras, the wall, Parky, all of it were variables that eventually came together in the day. It was massive fun.
It was great. It was really great.
Yeah.
Gillian, did you ever visit the house in Foxhill Drive at all, or were you purely at the studio?
No, I did go to Foxhill Drive. I remember going outside, and I don't know where did we do the bits with the girls? That wasn't there, was it?
No, that was a studio around the back.
It was a studio that was their bedroom was recreated.
Yeah, in fact, I've got this. What surprised me, this is the studio. But what?
Oh, wow, that's my drawing.
That's your.
I used to have a copy. Oh wow.
Well, I'll send you a copy.
Oh.
That's the van. So when you come out the house, when Bree came out the house and was interviewed in the van, so she'd get into the back of the van, cut 3 weeks later, she was here speaking.
It's magnificent.
It was mad.
And all of this was in your brain, Lesley. So because I remember that we'd all be saying, Can I
how's this going to work?
Have I got this right? I am but in reality, and we'd have endless discussions, and you'd be so patient because it was so complicated. But you'd always be completely on it. Always be completely on it. You'd done so much prep. I don't know what your script looks like, but it must be bombarded.
Saying that, like the yellow pages.
What do you think now, Lesley? Do you look back and wonder how you did it?
Oh my God! Yes,
it's just like full of shit. I've like notes, and also to the point, actually, I had to I color coded everything because like
You need
effects, vis effects, video effects, when the ghost comes in, when the wall comes in, it was all
yes.
it was all like that. And actually I do have this massive memory of people saying, you have to gonna tell us, sit down and tell us again. We've never done this before. You're gonna have to tell us again.
I'm glad it wasn't just me, because we were all trying to, but it was best to say, you've just got to tell me this again. Where am I
Run that by me again. Yeah.
I must admit, reading the script before starting shooting, I kind of went, I can't visualize it.
No, but
that's nothing to be rude about your script.
No.
It's purely about my brain not being able to kind of go, that happens, then that happens, and this is all happening. It's it's a lot to comprehend.
Yeah. But once we were all on board with it, like, like you were saying about going in the house and laying all the cables, and then the danger was that we were going to go too far with all of that. Too far with the outside broadcast stuff, as it were, that to make it and then it wouldn't start to look real. It would start.
I think that the fear at the BBC was, didn't they plague us all the way through about it not being scary enough? I certainly did when I was writing it, because I kept saying, if this is going to work, nothing can happen scary for at least 45 minutes.
Exactly.
And you try arguing that to a head of drama. Nothing's actually going to happen for 45 minutes, And they look at you.
Yeah, that's a hard sell, isn't it? Yeah.
It is a hard sell, but I was, I'm not a kind of dogged person, conflict-wise, but I was absolutely certain that was the way to do it, because getting back to what I said earlier on about everything having integrity, the integrity of this was, we've got to, at every stage, do it as if the BBC is really doing this program.
Yes.
That's the whole thing. It's got to be plausible. Even though it's a drama, it's got to be plausible. And if they were really doing it on Halloween night, they would be prepared for nothing happening for the whole program. And that's how you have to set it up. And delivering something early on wasn't an option, really. The first half, literally the first half, has to be setting up things to pay off in the second half. And that's what it is. Boom, 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 boom. And then and then from 45 minutes, then it all delivers, piece by piece.
Can I ask, did you and Lesley have a discussion about how many appearances of pipes there would be? I mean, obviously, you've got the initial ideas of it being there, but did you say, when you were looking at it, did you say, well, I think we need more or less or what? Because there's always this discussion about how many appearances of pipes there are, aren't there, really?
Yes,
we discussed this earlier, didn't we, just before we started?
Oh, did you? I'm so sorry, Sabrina.
No, fine. I mean, in my script, I have very clear markings where pipes is mentioned in the script. Right. Even if it's alluded to by Stephen, if there's, sometimes it's like very underscored.
Yes.
And there's an allusion to something, then I would have pipes. But also the other thing that, and then I did, in the edit, we put him in as much as possible, as it were. So that's slightly, so there would have been a few more. But then the other thing to take into account is that, I mean, classic BBC or any filmmaking that's anxious about economy and what you and your budget, if he was in for the day and already bought, as it were, I'd stick him in anywhere. If he was there,
yes, of course, get your money's worth.
Yeah. So it's worth looking at the schedule, because if once he was booked, then it's quite possible I'd put him in every scene, whether you could see him or not.
Just our principle, yeah.
And what was Keith like, Keith Ferrari? Because we've been able to find very little information about him. I was just wondering if anyone had any recollections, what he was like to work with.
I remember him being absolutely delightful and totally game. I mean,
game or gay?
Game.
Game.
Game. massively game. I mean, he just really loved being the ghost.
Yeah, I mean, he really. I took loads of really close-up photographs of all his makeup and everything, and he was like, "Yeah." And I said, "You sure you don't mind me sticking a camera in your face?" And he was like, "No, carry on. That's what I'm here for. You know, to enjoy." You know, he was so tolerant.
Yeah.
And we just don't know what happened to him. I've really tried to do some investigating, and
well, I know he's passed away. I know
yeah,
he's gone with us. Yeah, I don't know anything more about that.
no, or indeed any other credits, any other things that he'd worked at or worked
So
on.
is there anything on IMDb? I haven't looked.
No, I think there's only one listing for Ghostwatch.
Oh wow.
By the way, the film finished about 10 minutes ago.
Is there a list of questions we should be answering?
There was only one left. I mean, I've got plenty of questions, but it depends how long you guys want to keep going on for. I could do it for another 4 hours. I think the last question, pardon me, it says question from Mr. Volk, but I think at this point it'd be good to just, ask everybody. Were you secretly really chuffed that people thought Ghostwatch was real?
I think that for me, that's a kind of multi-answer question. A little bit like one of the questions earlier. When you write something, you want it to be effective. That's the way I would answer it, really. So, yeah, that's how I would answer it, actually.
That's from Amanda Fernley as well, just to say. But
you want it to be effective. You want it to be emotional. You want it to have an effect. Whether you make people scared, whether you want them to cry, whether you want them to remember it. So you do want it to be effective. Whether you're serious, I mean, it's such an extraordinary reaction it got. I'm thinking of the phrasing of the question. Were you secretly pleased? I don't think I was secretly anything. No, not like guilty pleasure, that phrase that I absolutely hate. It's that I was pleased that people. I mean, we could talk for hours about the genre of horror and how horror is not a negative genre. It's actually quite a positive one. I mean, I've written loads about that, but. For people that don't get horror, that you always have to argue with them about the idea, why would you get any pleasure from something that's going to frighten you to death? Now, people that get horror and enjoy horror, I use the word horror not meaning horrific, but horror, the general scary ghost story, supernatural genre, which is very broad, as we all know. There's people that just won't get why that is pleasurable. They don't want to feel anxious. They don't want to watch stories that are going to upset them or give them nightmares. But a whole lot of people do see the value in it in terms of...
I like being challenged. Yeah.
I mean, people like me, I just like seeing my anxieties reflected in a poetic art form, if you like. That's the way I would put it, because it reassures me. It reassures me that they have...
You're not bonkers.
There's some kind of form that other people I can share with other people, and we can kind of discuss these things in symbolic form. And that goes for literature, film, TV, however you want to do it. But the exact thing, are you secretly pleased with the reaction? That's still a difficult one to answer. I still would say I am pleased it has a reaction. And I'm pleased that people remember it in a good way. I guess what's implicit in the question is, are you secretly pleased that people were pissed off with it? That is really the question. And I would say I'm not pleased. I don't really take pleasure that people are pissed off with it. That's what I would say. People are pissed off with it and angry about it. I don't get pleasure they were angry about it, but I do get pleasure that they may be pleasurably scared about it if they're fans of the genre. Complicated answer, I'm afraid.
But a perfect one. And I think it's interesting. I think I tried to work out what the percentage was of complaints to viewers for Ghostwatch, and it's something like 0.1% or less than 0.1% of the people who watched it felt the need to complain about it, which would lead one to argue that the majority of people who watch Ghostwatch enjoyed it to some extent.
We've been had, but we enjoyed the experience.
Yeah,
Exactly,
well done,
yeah.
well done, well done. You got us. Yeah, yeah.
That's it.
And definitely the huge majority of comments that I see on social media, not just to me, but ones that I come across, because obviously, well, even on social media, people don't necessarily, wield the axe towards you. They sometimes will express negativity elsewhere. But even when I probe around elsewhere, the majority of people might say, it absolutely made me shit my pants, but it was fantastic. And that's quite honestly, not bragging or anything, that is the overwhelming majority of reactions I see now. People that remember it. There may be a whole massive percentage of people that don't even remember it, but of people that react to it seem to have that memory of it.
And I'm just curious to know, this is possibly the last question from me. I mean, by all means, if anybody else has anything to say, but I just wanted to ask everybody on the panel, what is it that you took from Ghostwatch further on in your career? I mean, it is an important part of everybody's career here, including my own, and in a much larger sense, my life. I was 7 years old when I watched Ghostwatch, and it had such a profound impact on me that it really is one of the reasons why I wanted to get into film and television and production and various things like that. That sort of ambition, if you will, as a fan to emulate what you love and to try and do something as good as that, or as meaningful. So I was just wondering, in professional terms, what did you take away from this particular project and move forward to the next project?
I don't think I carried anything literally, because it's such a one-off. I think in the general terms, if you have an idea that you kind of comes from the heart and you think is, you just feel instinctively that's what I want to do, and it kind of leaps to the front, the foremost part of your brain as something that you want to see. Go with that instinct against the other one. There may be other voices that say this is more commercial, that'll get me a job, that'll get me in with those people, that's the right career move. Always follow the one that maybe in ways that you don't quite understand kind of compels you emotionally, really. And that's what I try to keep remembering about in terms of ideas and developing ideas. The one that just compels you more than the other ones is the one to follow, even if you don't understand why.
For me, I learned masses and masses and masses, and I took masses forward, and I unlearned lots of stuff, which was great. But also, I feel like I approached the script from the inside out. I never tried to impose. I tried to unearth all the gems on all the gold and all the diamonds that Stephen had laid. I tried to unearth them and polish them, and I think once you start doing that, it's really exhilarating, and the piece runs away from you in a really good way, and I found, but in terms of having to explode the piece out and put it back together in a language that was alien to drama anyway, and to try and explore someone else's brain. I don't mean Stephen's, because Stephen and I were continuously exploring someone else's brain who would make this program on a Saturday night with, as someone to come in and sit down, having had a toffee apple somewhere. That was all. That was just a massively interesting journey for me, and I think I took a lot of. I think I take that to, hopefully, to every piece of work, even though it wasn't, and every piece of work since hasn't been as demanding.
For me, I was sort of 5-6 years into working in telly, and I definitely took a lot in terms of working with somebody like Ken. Ken had a very good sense of humor, and I try and have a sense of humor with the work I do now and people I work with. So as a legacy, I think that's something I took away. It was just the way he put the whole thing together and his thought processes. And one lovely little legacy, and I hate keep dropping my CV in, but I do a show called Big Fat Quiz of the Year, which has been going for 15 odd years. And on the set of Ghostwatch, there's some cardboard tubes, which are our columns. And on the Big Fat Quiz of the Year, there is cardboard columns on the set, and that's a direct result of doing
homage. Yes, yeah.
Which is why I remembered Ken doing them, because they were dirt cheap, and they're still dirt cheap. So,
and they look great.
Here's the legacy. When you watch Big Fat Quiz of the Year, think of Ghostwatch, because that's where the idea came from.
I think it's fair to say that there's I seem to recall in Big Fat Quiz of the Year, there's like the tape player, the Revox with the reel to reel.
Oh, is there? Okay.
Yeah, I might be wrong, but I seem to recall that.
Might be on the file.
I think what I was found so thrilling was, apart from this it's always the script, isn't it? Because that's the basic of what you're starting with. So that was thrilling to start with.
Yes, without that, you're dead in the water. Yeah.
Well, quite. But then, to work with Ruth and Lesley, that sort of didn't happen back then. And it's certainly the first time I'd worked with a female director and a female producer. And then the seamlessly, because everybody's personality, the three of you are so different, but you've all got a kind of generosity to say, even because I remember sometimes I would ask you stuff, Lesley, and you'd go, I don't know, actually. I don't know yet. And I don't think many people would have the courage to say that, because, directors normally have to just, even if they don't know, they will just make something completely up on the spot and you'd be stuck with it. And it needn't necessarily be right, but you'd be brave enough and you were so secure in what you were doing. And Stephen was, the communication level between Ruth and Lesley and Stephen, it was like it was a supercomputer that was all working at the same level. And to watch that in action was absolutely thrilling. Absolutely thrilling. And I've had glimpses of it since then, but it's never been quite as seamless. And I've done lovely things since then, but this was, because it was such an extraordinary thing to pull off. And it's down really to the personalities of the people, as Stephen says, caring so much about the project, but not letting any sort of funny ego stuff or proving a point or anything. You'd all listen, and Ruth is the calmest, isn't she? She was so sort of backward at coming forward and just making sure that your vision and your vision would be enabled.
Yeah.
And that is so rare in a producer. And it's a great sadness to me that you're not all in Hollywood. I don't understand it. Why the three of you aren't, why she isn't a big Hollywood producer and that you're doing, why aren't you in Hollywood? I don't know.
We're working, Gillian, we're working.
You're working on it, yeah, all right. When I win the lottery, I will finance it, okay?
Thank you.
But, yeah. And I don't think, did you know at the time that it was going to be so? I mean, you must have, I suppose it was a big deal for all of us, wasn't it, really?
I had absolutely no idea, but then I absolutely wasn't focused on it. I absolutely was focused on coming to the point
Peace.
of transmission. I absolutely have a complete blank after that because my job was done.
I think
you must have been exhausted as well.
We said earlier on to Rich, it wasn't so much as, oh, I wonder if this will be remembered in 28 years.
No, we had
like, fuck, I wonder if this is going to happen at all. Are they going to pull the plug on us like tomorrow? That's what the feeling at the time. just to kind of get through it was what was on our mind.
I remember having a conversation with Stephen saying, I remember you saying, I think it was, do you think they'll believe it for the first 10 minutes? We didn't realize it was going to
No, I always, actually I have a bit of slight clash with Ruth because she thinks I'm being disingenuous after the event, but I always kind of read it that, certainly the BBC never wanted to be a kind of hoax or a prank. They kind of wanted it to operate as a drama, as I did. So it was always like you had to justify its shape, its form, its validity, its subtext, everything. So it wasn't just about pulling off a prank. It was, and I really did think that the audience was sophisticated enough to kind of see through it, but nevertheless enjoy it. And my kind of barometer, if you like, was that they would be a little bit confused maybe for 10 or 15 minutes and then kind of twig, because really I was using myself as a barometer, thinking what would I think if I was a teenager or in my 20s watching this on a Saturday night, genre kind of savvy. I'd think, oh yeah, I get it. And that's so we were caught unawares or I was caught unawares to that extent. I think Ruth was more like, no, from the word go, we always thought the shit could hit the fan.
Did she?
That I think was her kind of attitude was, no, we all knew about War of the Worlds, Orson Welles' War of the Worlds. We knew that, and I'm more like, oh, come off it. We didn't think people would leave their homes, get in their cars, drive across the country because they thought Martians were invading. I thought that was highly unlikely,
But people did phone up and say, tell them that we've seen pipes, didn't they?
Yeah.
Which is both charming and
well, I think you all probably know that I wanted to, and I think Lesley looked into this, God bless her, about putting a kind of wolf whistle, a dog whistle on the track so that pets at home would go crazy across the country.
Right, yes.
That humans wouldn't hear, but dogs would go.
The dogs would hear. Dogs and passing bats would hear.
Sorry, TVs can't transmit that, though, unfortunately.
No, that's right. We found out.
I was told.
I was so touched that Lesley looked into it. I thought, my God, that was something that I would think we would be in trouble about.
I got stopped by Mark Shivers in the corridor. He said, "What's all this about a whistle?" So, Mike, what was Ghostwatch?
What was my takeaway? My takeaway from it was that inexperience doesn't always matter. And if you've got heart, you've got soul, you've got passion, and a can-do attitude, that can take you a long way. And yeah, I didn't know that much about sound. I didn't know that much about TV. I was fairly new. But I put my hand up and went, I'll have a go at this. Come on, this will be fun. And if you just sort of dig in and find from within yourself a sense of fun and joie de vivre, and much more is possible than you can believe. We're all capable of doing more than we think we can.
Don't be small.
That's a great.
Yeah, for me, a lot of people went, "Oh, you shouldn't be doing this. You're too inexperienced. You're too young. You're too naive. You shouldn't be allowed." And then I said, "Yeah, but you don't have the balls to do it. So tough. I stuck my hand up and went for it, and it's taught me to always, when someone's asked me difficult things or things that I'm not sure, I always go, I don't know, but I'll give it a go." And I'm not frightened. I thought your point about Lesley was saying, I don't know, is also a good thing that I kind of learned, that I didn't know about what was happening a lot of the time. But asked the right questions, and I found everyone so charming. And there was this awful attitude slightly within the sound department that shut up, mind your place, you're a little person sort of thing. And actually, you don't have to be a little person. You don't have to mind your place. If you're nice to people and you ask questions, everyone's charming. Everyone's willing to help. You know, I learned lots about cameras and lighting and sound and special effects and all, and because I asked everyone all sorts of questions. Because for me, it was a hoot. And it was like, whoa, you're in TV Playground. This is fantastic. Just put your heart into it, because you're getting a lot out of it. So just throw whatever you've got at it. And, you know, I don't have many talents, but I gave it all I had. And, you know, that lasted 5 seconds. But but it was fun. And I look back on it and I cherish the time. And it's taught me, have a go at things, even if you're not sure. And say, I'm not sure, but I'll give it a go.
Yeah, it's great. It's really good. I think that's a good point to end on, actually. That's a good optimistic
It is.
to end it, if you don't mind. Rick. But
yeah,
absolutely.
Just looking at my copy of Radio Times, and Match of the Day is on, guys. Match of the Day is on now, so from 1992. And would you believe Gary Lineker? That's
still in those days. Blimey.
I know.
Wasn't that the most sinister sort of, you know, after Parky had gone down, and now for Match of the Day?
That's very true. That's very true.
That was fantastic.
Anyway, thank you very much, Rich.
Thank you. Thank you, Rich.
It's lovely to catch up with you all.
Mike and Richard, Gillian.
Good to see you. See you again.
Gorgeous.
Great to see you. Great to see
Loved
you.
it.
Right.
Well done, Rich.
Have a great weekend, guys.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Right, I think everyone's signing off now. Bye, Lesley.
See ya.
Well, what can I say? That's been one hell of a 10th anniversary. Thank you so much to everybody for tuning in. The studio is completely dark. It's just blackness now. The lights have failed. The camera's gone off. Well, before I sign off, I just want to say thank you so much again for tuning in. I want to apologize to Ruth Baumgarten as well. I'm sorry if she was unable to get through. And thanks again to Rob from Hidden Britain Sign Co. for sending the sign. And to everyone else who I've forgotten, I'm so sorry, but thank you so much for making this event so wonderful. See you in another 10. And remember, try not to have sleepless nights.